This conference will now be recorded.
Marco, te envié un text para que coteje lo de control de turnos.
Okay.
Me dejas saber qué decides para hacerlo.
Good morning, everyone. Today, Wednesday, August 12, 2020, 170 CFMC meeting. We're going to start the meeting. Just a reminder, to participate, state your name. Every time you participate, state your name on every participation. Use the chat to ask for a turn to speak, or the emoji with the little hand. All votes by roll call, full name, yes, no, or abstain. Public comments will have 5 minutes in the end of the meeting. The meeting will be recorded, and simultaneous translation is available like yesterday. And we can start the roll call. Natalia?
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start with Graciela.
Buenos días, Graciela García Moliner, Council Staff.
Liajay Rivera.
Liajay Rivera, Council Staff. Buenos días.
Miguel Rolón.
Good morning, Miguel Rolón, Council Staff.
Jack McGovern.
Jack McGovern, NOAA Fisheries. Good morning.
Alexis Sabin. Alexis Sabin. Alida Ortiz.
Alida Ortiz present.
Bill Cordero. Bill Cordero.
Bill Cordero present, excuse me.
Carlos Farchete. Carlos. Cristina Olán.
Buenos días, Cristina Olán, Council Staff.
Diana Martino.
Buenos días, Diana Martino, Council Staff.
Edward Schuster.
Edward Schuster, DAP Chair, St. Croix. Good morning.
Iris Oliveras. Iris. Jocelyn D'Ambrosio.
Hello, good morning. Jocelyn D'Ambrosio, NOAA Office of General Counsel.
John Walter. John Walter. Julian McGrath.
Julian McGrath, DAP Chair, St. Thomas, St. John.
Buenos días, Tony Blanchard, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Tony. Katie Siegfried.
Good morning, Katie Siegfried, Southeast Fisheries Science Center.
Lauren Rensburg.
Lauren Remsburg, NOAA Office of General Counsel. Morning.
Michelle Chatter.
Buenos días, Michelle Scherer, Independent Contractor.
Marcos Hanke.
Good morning, everyone. Marcos Hanke, present.
Maria Irizarry.
Good morning.
Good morning, Maria. Maria Lopez.
Buenos días, María del Mar López, NOAA Fisheries.
Matthew Walia.
Good morning, Matt Walia, NOAA Office of Law Enforcement.
Miguel Borges.
Miguel Borges, NOAA Office of Law Enforcement. Good morning.
Nelson Crespo.
Good morning, everyone. Nelson Crespo, DAP Chair, Puerto Rico.
Nicole Angeli.
Good morning, Nicole Angeli, USVI, Department of Planning and Natural Resources.
Orion Sadiq.
Good morning, everyone. Orion Sadiq, Pew Charitable Trust.
Ricardo Lopez. Good morning, Ricardo Lopez, Puerto Rico DNR. Richard Appledorn.
Good morning, Rich Appledorn, SSA Chair.
Robert Copeland.
Good morning, Lieutenant Robert Copeland, U.S. Coast Guard District 7.
Sarah Stevenson.
Good morning, Sarah Stevenson, NOAA Fisheries.
Skylar Zagaris.
Skylar Zagaris, NOAA Fisheries.
Towner Rankin.
Good morning, Tona Rankin, NOAA Fisheries.
Vanessa Ramirez.
Good morning, Vanessa Ramirez, Council Member.
I think we have
Morning, this is Carlos Farchetti. I had audio problems. Carlos Farchetti, President, Council Member.
Thank you, Carlos. I think if I miss anybody, I think that's all I have in my list.
Good morning, Damaris Delgado, Puerto Rico DNR.
Thank you, Damaris.
Thank you, Natalia.
Good morning, Iris Oliveras, Council Staff.
Thank you, Iris. Anybody else? Please write on the chat if there is anybody that is having any trouble with the audio. We just have we're gonna have to keep on with the meeting. I want to highlight today that our meeting is a half day. I need the cooperation of everybody in order to finish with this agenda. Many important issues we're going to address. Speaking with Miguel Rolón this morning, we have on other business some items to cover, which is Miguel. Do you want to explain that, or want me just to give the titles?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two topics that will be covered by Carlos Farchetti, the lobster fishery in St. Croix, and the island-based FMP for St. Croix, and then the generation gap. How do we get young fishers into the fishery? And I believe that that will be shared with Julian and Ruth if she joins in for a possible project. And then that will be followed by the executive order of the president for the seafood of the United States industry. And I will explain a little bit about it.
Thank you very much, Miguel. Let's start. Today again, I need the cooperation of everybody being very precise and objective on your participation in order to follow the agenda, a half-day agenda that we have. The first present.
Mr. Chairman, David Ortiz is present and Carlos Farchetti wants to speak.
Okay, David Ortiz, recognize your presence. Carlos Farchetti, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, when we were discussing the gill and trammel net for pelagics, it kind of slipped me, and I was wondering how, maybe Roy can tell me what can we get to include trawling nets in that discussion.
Carlos, just for clarity, I couldn't hear which kind of net?
Trawling. You know, you got those big trawlers that put out those humongous nets.
TRAW, right?
Yeah, TRAWLING, trawling.
Okay.
Double LING.
Okay.
Carlos, just send an email to Graciela and she will take care of it with the rest of the staff.
Okay.
Thank you, Carlos. The first item on the agenda, island-based fishery management plans update. Maria del Mar Lopez.
Yes, hi, good morning. This is going to be a short update. Did you have the presentation? Okay, yeah. So in the slide on the screen, you're going to see what I am going to be, just a summary of what I'm going to be talking about. So this is island-based fishery management plans, the progress to date. From the last meeting, we mentioned, for those of you that participated, that the notice of availability of the fishery management plans was published, and it's still open for comment until August 25th, 2020. And if you follow that link that it's on the screen, or if you go to the council's website, you can see the fishery bulletin, or you can get access directly to where this document is in the regulation in the internet, and then you can make your comments. Also, you can send your comments through mail. If you have any questions on how to provide any more comments, please send me an email or chat me, and I will provide that information for you. So the other thing that's coming up is, as Jocelyn mentioned yesterday, is the decision day on the island-based FMPs, which is the Secretary of Commerce makes a determination as to approve, disapprove, or partially approve the plans. And this is going to happen, the deadline for this is in September 24, 2020. And so this is the day where the plans should be approved. Next, after that, we are going to continue developing the proposed rule and associated documents. We're already working on that. And once that is ready, we are going to publish fishery bulletins that is going to indicate how to make comments on that proposed rule. And that proposed rule is going to be open for comments for 30 days. This information is going to be published by the council, and it's also, you're going to receive also this information in fishery bulletins. The comments, all the comments that are received are going to be addressed in the final rule. And that final rule, when it's published, after it is published, 30 days later, the fishery management plans are going to be implemented. So as I have mentioned in the past, our goal is to have the plans applicable in the 2021 fishing season. So that's the goal, and we're working hard to get there. And in the meantime, the council would continue to discuss actions for potential amendments to each one of the island-based FMPs as desired and as needed. And again, just to reiterate, the fishery management plans are still open for comment for another week, August 25th. So far, we have received 2 comments, and you can take a look at all of that if you visit the website. So that's all I have in case anybody has any other questions.
Thank you, Maria. I don't see anybody on the chat for now. Okay, let's go for the next item on the agenda. Hearing no questions, which is option paper or updating spiny lobster annual catch limit.
Good morning, this is Sarah Stevenson. I'll be doing this presentation. So there was an options document that was sent to the council and is up on their webpage, which is what you're seeing now. And if we need to, we can refer to this document at the end with questions. But for now, if you'll go to the presentation, I'm just going to go through this presentation kind of quickly because it is a lot of information. And I'll take questions at the end. This presentation will just provide an overview of options for updating management reference points for spiny lobster following the accepted CDAR 57 stock assessments. The modifications to the management reference points would be included in an amendment to each of the island-based fishery management plans. Next. The first few slides of the presentation just provide a brief overview or review of actions that have already happened. The 3 island-based FMPs were voted up at the December 2019 council meeting for review, approval, and implementation. The comment period, as Maria just said, for the notice of availability for the plans is open through August 25th. So there's still time to make comments on the notice. Each island-based FMP includes the council's acceptable biological catch control rule, which was used to determine management reference points for each stock and stock complex included in each of the 3 FMPs. All stock and stock complexes in those FMPs were under Tier 4 of the ABC control rule, which was considered to be data limited with no accepted assessment available. The management reference points determined under Tier 4 for each stock or stock complex would remain in place until such time that they were amended. The island-based FMPs updated the management reference points for spiny lobster from those that were determined through amendments to the spiny lobster FMP, and the acceptable biological catch and annual catch limits for spiny lobster under each island-based FMP are shown in this table. And we can come back to those if need be. Next slide, please. This is just a quick look at Tier 4A of the control rule, which was used to determine management reference points for spiny lobster under each island-based FMP. Tier 4A stocks are data limited with no accepted assessment, but with a relatively low vulnerability to fishing pressure. For each island, the spiny lobster stock was considered to be highly productive with low to moderate level of susceptibility to the fishery. And the council considered the long history of management and compatible regulations for spiny lobster and set the ACL for each island at 95% of the ABC that was resultant from the control rule. Next slide, please. The Southeast Data Assessment and Review, which is what CDAR stands for, the CDAR stock assessments for spiny lobster were completed in August of 2019 and initially reviewed by the SSC at their October 2019 meeting. The CDAR 57 stock assessments estimated numerical values for the maximum sustainable yield proxy, which is the largest long-term yield that can be taken from a stock under current conditions, the maximum fishing mortality threshold, which is used to determine if a stock is undergoing overfishing, and the minimum stock size threshold, which is used to determine if a stock is overfished. The tier 4 of the control rule had those determinations, but wasn't able to assign a numerical value to it. The CDAR 57 stock assessment was able to do that. The stock assessments also projected overfishing limits for 2019 to 2022, but following a council request at the December meeting, the Southeast Fisheries Science Center updated those model projections using more recent landings data and projected overfishing limits for years 2021 through 2026, which were presented to the council at the June 2020 meeting. At the May 2020 meeting, the SSC determined that the CDAR 57 stock assessments are suitable for management of ice, and the SSC chair reported that out at the June 2020 council meeting. Next slide, please. Having an accepted assessment shifts the spiny lobster stock for each island from Tier 4A to Tier 3 of the ABC control rule, which would require an amendment to update the management reference points. Tier 3 stocks are still considered to be data limited, but with an accepted assessment. So that's the big difference. Discussions at the December 2019 and the June 2020 council meetings focused on procedures for determining the ABC from the projected OFLs, including the council's acceptable level of risk for the probability of overfishing for the spiny lobster, and that, AKA, that was the P-star that a lot of the discussions centered around. Next slide, please. Following the accepted assessments, an amendment would be needed for each island-based FMP to update the management reference points for the stock. At the June meeting, the council requested staff bring in options for updating the spiny lobster ACLs to this meeting that could be considered in a joint amendment to the 3 FMPs. Under the amendment, the MSY, MFMT, MSST, and OFL management reference points would be updated automatically based on the CDAR 57 determinations. For updates to the spiny lobster ABC, the council would provide input to the SSC on its acceptable probability of overfishing, or P-star. Based on that P-star, the SSC would then recommend ABCs as reduced from the OFLs for 2021 through 2026. The council provided their selected P-star at the June meeting, and that decision and resulting discussion was captured and included as action 1 of the options paper. For updates to the spiny lobster ACL, the council would first need to determine how they would use the ABCs recommended by the SSC, either using the annual ABCs recommended for each year, which would result in ACLs that change every year, or using a multi-year ABC that would result in an ACL that is set at a constant value. The council would then need to set the ACL from the ABC, accounting for their level of management uncertainty and their ability to constrain catch to the ACL. These steps are included in action 2 of the options paper. Depending on the processes used and the outcomes of updating the ACLs, the accountability measures for spiny lobster included in the island-based FMPs may need to be revised. Since those ACL outcomes are unknown at this time, the revision of the accountability measure was not included in the options paper, but will be discussed briefly at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Following the request at the June council meeting, staff drafted an options paper that could be considered in a joint amendment to the island-based FMPs that would modify the spiny lobster management reference points based on the CDAR 57 stock assessments. The options paper simply provides examples that the council could consider for updating those management reference points. The council could accept, modify, reject, or add to the options that are provided in the paper. The options paper is available on the council's webpage and includes 2 actions. Action 1 provides options for updating the ABCs, which were based on discussions at the December 2019 meeting and that the PSTAR decision made at the June 2020 meeting. And Action 2 provides options for updating the spiny lobster ACL for each island. Next, please. Under Action 1, the council would select their PSTAR for spiny lobster for each island group and accept the SSC's recommendation associated with that PSTAR. Since the council considered a range of PSTAR values and selected an acceptable PSTAR of 0.45, Action 1 records the council's decisions and rationale in the document for the options that were considered. 7 options were included in the options paper. Option 1 is the no action, which would retain the ABC for spiny lobster specified in each island-based FMP, but this option would not allow for updates to the ABC based on the best scientific information available, aka the CDAR stock assessments, and this is required for analysis purpose, this option. Options 2 through 7 correspond to the range of PSTAR values selected by the council at the December meeting, with option 2 corresponded to a PSTAR of 0.4 and so on until option 7, which corresponds to the PSTAR of 0.45. At the June meeting, the council discussed the range of PSTAR values considered and selected a PSTAR of 0.45 that reflected the level of uncertainty in the CDAR 57 stock assessments that they were comfortable with to ensure that overfishing does not occur. In the options paper, option 7 is listed as the preliminary preferred option for Puerto Rico, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. Tables are included in the option paper for each island or island group that list the resulting ABCs for spiny lobster for each option. The tables are just too big to include in the presentation, so if people would like at the end, we can switch over to the document and look at those. A high-level comparative analysis of the options was also included. Next slide, please. Under Action 2, the council would select the process for determining the ACL and optimum yield for spiny lobster in each island or island group from the ABCs that were recommended by the SSC. That reflects the council's level of management uncertainty. Per the Magnuson-Stevens Act and regulations, the ACL set by the council cannot exceed the ABC recommended by the SSC. It can be equal to the recommended ABC, but it cannot exceed the ABC. This legal requirement guided the options that were considered in the options paper. 3 options were included under Action 2, and as I mentioned previously, the options can be modified per council guidance. Option 1 is the no action, which would retain the ACL for spiny lobster specified in each island-based FMP. Similar to the previous action, this option would not allow for updates to the ACL based on the best scientific information available, but it's required for analysis purposes. At this time, only 2 options were considered based on the ABCs that were recommended by the SSC. Next slide. Option 2 would set the ACL and the optimum yield equal to the ABC recommended by the SSC for each year from 2021 to 2026, as reduced by a management uncertainty buffer in one of the sub-options. Under this option, the ACLs would change from year to year during the 6-year period because the ABCs change every year. Sub-options 2A through 2C use a range of management uncertainty buffers from 0 to 10%, which were selected as options just based on historical actions. Sub-option 2A would set the ACL equal to the ABC recommended by the SSC in each year. Sub-option 2B would set the ACL at 95% of the recommended ABC each year. And sub-option 2C would set the ACL at 90% of the recommended ABC each year. Option 3 would set the ACL and optimum yield equal to the minimum ABC recommended by the SSC for the 2021 to 2026 time period, again, as reduced by management uncertainty buffer in one of the sub-options. Under this option, the ACL for spiny lobster in each island group would be set at a constant value during the 6-year period. The minimum ABC was used in order to keep the ACL each year under the recommended ABC, and I'll show you how this works in just a moment and why we selected this option. Sub-options 3A through 3C use the same range of management uncertainty buffers as option 2, and again, those could be modified or added to if so requested by the council. Tables for action 2 are included in the options paper for each island group that list the resulting ACLs for spiny lobster for each option and sub-option and corresponding to each P-star value from action 1. So you can kind of get the whole suite of what the ACLs could be. Other options may be possible for setting ACLs from the recommended ABCs, but only these 2 options were included in the options paper in order to provide a complete document with comparative analysis in time for this August meeting. Next slide, please. This is just a quick look at pros and cons to be considered when comparing the options for action 2. As mentioned, option 1, the no action, would not update the management reference points for spiny lobster based on the CDAR 57 stock assessments, and so it wouldn't be based on the best scientific information available. Option 2, which sets the ACL equal to the ABC each year as reduced by some level of management uncertainty, would set ACLs at a higher level than the option 3 sub-options, but would result in ACLs that change every year. That would prompt an action be included in the amendment to revise accountability measures, which are currently compared to a set value ACL. Also, considering the 2-year data lag in available commercial landings, having ACLs that change from year to year could prevent a timely evaluation of whether the ACL that was in effect during a given year was exceeded. And this complicates efforts to ensure accountability with the ACL. Option 3, which would set a constant value ACL from the recommended ABCs, would be similar to the current process in which landings are compared to a constant value ACL, and that would be easier and less confusing for monitoring purposes. Under this action, the AM would not necessarily need to be revised, although it may be updated to reflect different years of landings data. However, due to legal requirements that state that the ACL cannot exceed the recommended ABC, the ACL would need to be set equal to the minimum value of the ABCs recommended during the 6-year period. For St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, in which the ABCs increase in the first year, 2021, and then decrease in time to converge on the level of the MSY proxy. Those are the graphs that Adian showed us at the June meeting. This option would not allow for that increase in catch initially observed in the first year. Therefore, over the 6-year period, a portion of the acceptable catch recommended by the SSC could be foregone with option 3. Staff realized that setting the ACL from the minimum ABC may not be desirable, especially in light of that foregone yield, and considered other options for setting ACLs from the ABCs that were recommended by the SSC. That's the next slide, please. Here are some of those options that were considered: using the average ABC from the 6-year period, using the median ABC value, or using that maximum ABC value. However, all three of those options failed the requirement that the ACL not exceed the ABC in one or more of the 6 years. The table to the right highlights the example of using the average ABC calculated from the 2021 through 2026 ABCs that were recommended by the SSC to set the ACL over that same range, over the same range of management uncertainty buffers used in options 2. So no management uncertainty buffer, 0.95 or 0.9. The red numbers in the table represent years in which the ACL exceeded the ABC recommended for that year. So you can see that the ACLs in the last column, which represent a management uncertainty buffer of 0.9 applied to the average ABC, only violates the legal requirement in the last year. This example helps illustrate the point that based on the ABCs that were recommended by the SSC, only by setting the ACL equal to the minimum value during that time period would result in an ACL value that is less than the ABC. If you set it at any other value, you're going to violate that requirement in at least the last year. Sorry, in at least the year with the lowest ABC. Similar results happen when using the median ABC or the maximum ABC to set the ACL. Some years would have an ACL that is greater than the recommended ABC, which would violate the Magnuson-Stevens Act and regulations. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? The Spiny Lobster Interdisciplinary Planning Team, or IPT, which is comprised of council and NIMP staff, will work with the Science Center to evaluate other options based on the SSCs that were recommended, which change every year, to see if there's something that we could do based on what the SSC has already recommended. The council could request the SSC recommend an acceptable constant catch ABC for each island group, in addition to the moving catch that they've already recommended. This would provide the council with more options for setting a constant catch ACL that could allow for more harvest over the 6-year period when compared to option 3, which was using the minimum value of the ABCs already recommended. And then following council input and guidance from this meeting, the IPT will develop the Spiny Lobster amendment to the island-based FMPs for consideration at the December council meeting. Next slide, please. Depending on that input and guidance that we get, the draft amendment may include a third action to revise the accountability measures for Spiny Lobster. Under the island-based FMPs, the accountability measure for lobster uses a spin-up process to compare landings data to the Spiny Lobster ACL. And again, that's a set value ACL. In the spin-up process, a single year followed by a 2-year average, followed by a 3-year average of landings would be compared to that Spiny Lobster ACL. And that would remain constant through time until so amended. If an AM is triggered, the length of the Spiny Lobster fishing season would be reduced the following year by the amount necessary to ensure landings do not again exceed the ACL in the year of the application. This application of the AM would be less straightforward if the ACL changed every year. So that's why it would probably need to be revised. If the council considers options that result in ACLs that change from year to year, the AM would need to be revised. For example, the trigger for that AM could compare a single year of landings to a single year ACL, or it could compare average landings over multiple years to the average ACL for those years. If needed, options for an accountability measure revision would be included and analyzed as a third option in the amendment. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Great presentation. A lot of things to digest and to understand. Any questions for Sarah? I have nothing on the chat yet. Damaris, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. From my understanding, the lobster populations in Puerto Rico are doing fine. Why are you considering an option to make more strict measures?
Thank you. That is because of the new stock assessment that was done and that was accepted by both the SSC and the council. So based on the determinations that were made in that stock assessment, it shifted the tiers that spiny lobster was lifted in, which is what those original ACLs were set on, into a new tier. So they all need to be redone, and based on the values that came out of the stock assessment, that's why this is happening. And so they are more restrictive than what would be included in the island-based FMPs. But if you compare them to the current ACLs from the spiny lobster FMP, they actually could potentially increase depending on which management uncertainty buffer was selected. So all of this was triggered by the stock assessment.
All right, thank you.
Richard, and after Richard, Vanessa.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me. I have a lawnmower going outside my house here. Just a couple of comments. When the council is considering these things, they should be aware that they're, we're putting together our experience with the lobster fisheries over time, with what the model is saying about the lobster fisheries over time. And when we were back in tier 4, we were going, okay, our experience was pretty good, let's go up this, and we actually upped it quite a bit. The model is telling us that maybe we shouldn't do it that way. So our history of success was based on the old ACL. You don't really didn't have any history to know whether the new ACL would have been under tier 4, would have been good or not. The model is telling us that no, that's not where we want to be. And as it was pointed out, that's the best information we have at the moment. It is a data limited model, and there might be some aspects of it that will change as we get information, especially on the selectivity information that studies that are underway or starting to get underway will answer. So we're hoping maybe there'll be some updates that will improve the scenario. But please be in mind, keep in mind that the analysis that was done under the CDR process did show that populations exceeded the overfishing level in 2 of the 3 platforms, albeit for brief periods. So it is possible under the current fishing levels or levels that have historically occurred to exceed the levels where we should be. So we have to be a little bit more cautious. This may not be what's actually happening in the population, because as I said, this is a data limited model and things may be more robust than we think. But the actions are driven by the model, not by what we otherwise think. So that's the reason for having some caution, so we don't trigger an overfishing determination. Thank you.
Vanessa?
Yes, thank you. Vanessa Ramirez, Council Member for the record. I have some comments. We already know that the data in Puerto Rico is not the best. basis on the number of commercial fishermen that have license, and practically 50% of the real commercial fishermen don't have license. Some because they lose between the time 2017 after Maria, they don't complete the process for the renovation, and they have to start again practically 2018, 2019. So if we, it's just a question. If we are taking the numbers basis on 2017, 2018, how will this affect our commercial fishermen that now they are taking out their license again, putting again the numbers or the real numbers in the statistics? Basically, with this number, just one town or the west side of the island will make that quote. So I think that we should think on that before, because if we consider this for the next 5 years, we are trying in the fish markets, we're trying in here to make them put the real numbers, tell them that that doesn't affect the government benefits. That is the most common thing that they use, to just don't put the real numbers. And also we're trying, after this pandemic, they are now looking for their license again, and many of the furtives that we have are now having their provisional license. How will this affect for the next years if we already know that the data is not the correct, and that practically I could say by day that what I see in here, just one town, my town, will make practically more than the 7% of this quote. Thanks.
Sarah?
Hi, Sarah. So I think that's more a question for the Science Center. Is there someone on that could maybe address how the data that's going to be coming out in the next few years, how that could maybe play into the levels that are set from CDAR?
Anybody from the Science Center?
Is Adiana on the call?
Yes, hello, this is John Walter. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Science. And as the landings data come in, they'll be accounted for in the progress towards the annual catch limit. And we noted that landings have been down due to the hurricanes and a lot of effects on the fishers due to that. So we would expect them to come up. And most of these options are substantial increases from what recent years have been because of that. And so presumably those increased catches as fishermen recover would be possible under any of these ABCs and ACLs.
Yeah, thank you. We have Julian, then Roy.
Yeah, Tony Blanchard. Could you bring back up the slide with the chart on it? Yeah, righty. I got a question. Why is it taken on a 6-year? Why does the chart go through 6 years instead of a shorter or a longer term?
Hi, this is Sarah. So the 6 years are based on the period that the CDAR assessments projected OFLs. So OFLs were projected for years 2021 through 2026. And so the SSC set, and the council together, set the ABCs for those same 6 years. So we don't have any projections past the year 2026. And when I mentioned that in the next step slide, how the IPT could get together with the Science Center, we could get together and try to determine, are there any other options that maybe we could use that would get a higher level of catch over the 6-year time period, but that wouldn't violate the requirement that ACL be equal to or less than the ABC. So there may be other options out there, but that's why we're only looking at the 6-year period. And so the first question, I guess, to the council is, do you want an ACL that changes from year to year, even if it's the first 3 years is one value, the second 3 years, or if they change every 2 years? Like, is that okay? Is that something that you would consider, knowing that it means you have to revise the accountability measures, how things are triggered, how things are compared to the ACL? Or do you just want a constant value through time? You want one number that you have to know, that you have to compare your landings to. So that's kind of the first question. But that's why we only use the 6 years. Does that answer your question?
Well, I got a comment on it, because this is how I'm looking at it. We're looking at projections going through a 6-year period, right?
Yes.
Right now, we can't even project what will happen in the next 6 months with this pandemic, as an example, or the hurricane season, which we're getting up into the height of it. But we are here speculating and projecting what things are going to look like in the next 6 years. So the point I'm trying to make here is, the longer we look ahead, is the more inaccurate this will become. So what I am looking at is a shorter time frame that we will be able to work with, and that is probably more realistic in the grand scheme of things. You understand what I'm saying? How I see it is a longer ahead. The farther ahead we look at this, it's like looking at the hurricanes and the weatherman them, and they're projecting what's going to happen in a week's time. The projections that they will tell you clearly, farther out it is, the farther away it is the harder to make an accurate projection. So the point here is, the farther out we look, it's harder to project an accurate, come up with accurate numbers.
And this is Julian McGrath, just to add in with what Tony's saying. I think it should be a shorter time period, and then, you know, you're watching at these projections and the numbers keep going down. Before we ran the ACLs off of one set number, you had 3 years that you collect information that would give you an overrun or underrun, something to work with. But here it is, you're projecting that the numbers are continue going to decline. Well, actually, right now, the numbers are down because the lobster fishery is taking one of the biggest hits due to the fact of the pandemic and the hotels being closed. So those numbers are really down. But we don't know what's going to happen 6 months to a year from now. I don't think the pandemic is going away anytime soon. You know, right here in St. Thomas, right now, our cases are almost 40 new cases a day. So we are on the rise. So, you know, I think looking at this longer time period and different numbers is a problem. I think it needs to be a shorter time period and stick with one number for at least 3 years, and let's see what happens over that 3-year period.
Tony Sanchal again.
Tony,
my question is this, okay?
Tony,
to follow up on Mr. McGrath.
Yes, because Richard Appleton want to follow up on your observation. Finish, then I pass to Richard, then to Roy on the queue. Go ahead.
Okay. What was wrong with keeping it at 3 year? How we have it currently, looking at it 3 years, and if we overrun it, then we deal with it on a 3-year average. Why we can't? The question is, why can't we stick to the 3-year average scenario?
Tara?
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted me to answer that or go straight to Richard. You could do that, but the reason why it was set up this way in the options paper and the document was because this was the information that came out of the CDAR assessment and down through the SSC. So if the projections, if the SSC says that it would be acceptable to just do something using the first 3 years, then we could follow that. We didn't want to make that assumption, so we used the information that came out of the assessment.
Let's give opportunity to Richard to weigh in, then Roy Crabtree after that.
Okay, thank you. The reason, I'm not sure which island this is for, but the reason the numbers would go down in this projection is because the catch rates that were used to set this clearly indicated that fishing had been much lower, and therefore there is excess amount of lobsters that are available to be harvested. And then gradually that's reduced down to where the ABC value would be. And therefore it's allowing you to take this extra. The SSC had recommended that you may want to do periodic updates to this. It's not changing the model, it's just changing what Tony had said. If you find out that you were under harvesting because of storms, pandemics, or whatever, you just ask for a recalculation, and the excess amount of stock that was made available by not being harvested due to those impacts would then be recalculated into the ABC automatically. You'd have to somehow update your plan to accept those changes, but those changes can be made very quickly. And it was our recommendation, in fact, that you do that. His point about those projections being less realistic the further you go out is absolutely true. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Richard. Roy Crabtree. Roy, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I got kicked off momentarily. Well, I think I agree with a lot of what Tony's saying. Projecting out 6 years is a long time, and typically with a number of SSCs, they'll only give projections out for 3 years, sometimes 5 years, but even that's a long way to go. And it seems to me in this case, what we ought to do is schedule an update of the assessment or to be done, let's say in 2023. This would just be an update. So it'd pull in the landings and that kind of information. And then we could probably look at setting the ABCs out for, based on 3 years. And then we get the new update done in 2023 and put in place new catch levels from 2024 out. I believe John Walter is on. I don't know if there's a schedule or if y'all thought about when we ought to do an update, but certainly given all the things going on with uncertainties about effort, how much effort it's going to be, there's a lot of reasons for why we might want to ensure that we have a update assessment in 3 years. And I'd be interested in hearing John's thought on what he would think about is just setting based on 3 years of the projection and then schedule an update, and then we reset things there. And if that's something the Science Center feels like would be workable.
Thank you, Roy. A response from John Walter, and I agree with what you say. This is Marcos. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so the CDAR Steering Committee is the committee who plans and schedules assessments. Right now, on the books for the Caribbean, next up in the queue is Queen Trigger on all 3 island platforms. Then that is scheduled for 2001 to start. Then Queen Snapper in 2022, Redtail Parrotfish at the same time, and then 2024 Lane Snapper. Right now, we don't have lobster on the planning schedule that I can see, but lobster is clearly one of the most species, and presumably that could be taken up and some reprioritization happen. Now, as an update or kind of an interim assessment is probably something that, as long as the data were available and the data collection streams fairly well, it wouldn't be that hard to do. What I'm hearing potentially be different or affected by differential reporting, and that could challenge the conducting the assessment. But as long as the data comes in, I think it's something that we could bring to the CDR steering committee to get in the queue earlier. That would allow for setting an ABC for 3 years under the assumption that in 2023 an assessment would occur that would allow for an update of the status. Thanks.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Ryan.
Marcus.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, that's helpful, John. And that seems like to me a good course of action. And then I don't think any of us want to set different ACL values for each year and have to deal with that, change the accountability mechanism. So maybe what we could do is kind of direction to staff that we want to look at setting constant ACL, so we need a constant ABC. We'd like to focus on 3 years, and then at the next CDR steering committee meeting, which I believe there is already one scheduled in the fall, we try to get an update for Spiny Lobster scheduled for 2023, and we make adjustments in the assessment schedule as needed, and we go with that. And then staff can kind of pull all this together for us to review next time around along those lines if they think that's workable. And I don't know if that would mean we need to have the SSC look at this again or not. I guess we'd need some input about that.
Thank you, Roy. And I think we are going in the right route here. Graciela?
No, I'll defer to Richard, who wants to respond to Roy, and you have other people in the queue.
Yes, it's a lot of people on the queue. It's a little confusing. And Richard?
Okay, 2 points. As I said, one of the reasons these values go down, as we're looking at it in this table, is that you are dealing with excess stock and you're allowing the fishery to catch that and gradually getting down to where the a set OFL and an ABC would occur. So it's taking this projection is 6 years to get down to that level. If you want to change it to 3 years, you're going to get down to that level in 3 years, I think is how that would be mandated. But that's probably more a question for Jocelyn. The thing that the SSC was recommending was that the most recent landings data be used and to recalculate what the ABCs would be. And this can be done pretty much with a click of a button because the model's already set up and to do that. All you're introducing is the new landings information. And while that would require some administrative change to accept the new ABCs, this is not a new CDR assessment. It doesn't need to be put on the CDR schedule or anything like that. If we finally get information, say, on gear selectivity that's different, that would change the model, and that would probably require some form of CDR assessment. I'm not sure it's a full review or some kind of partial change, but so there's 2 things going on here. Just changing the landings data information to actually implement and accept what the real situation is in the fishery relative to landings. That's very simple to do and doesn't require a big analysis. It just requires whatever process needs to have the ABC set from whatever the old value was to the new value. But if you actually wanted to drive this to a 3-year time period, I think you're going to drive it from that 164 to the 120 to in that 3-year period. So, like I said, there might be some clarification on that on what's legally acceptable. But the point of the analysis is to get to the what the ABC would be if we were fishing at maximum sustainable yield all the time. So if you want to try, if you want to say it takes longer to get there, maybe there's there'll be a different allocation of the resources. If you want to say, I want to get there in a shorter period of time, there's going to be a different allocation of the resources. But that's why you have the 6-year thing, to gradually get you to where that fixed ABC would be if you're fisheries.
Marcos, I suggest that we allow Jocelyn to say something. Maybe we need to reconsider the legalities of anything that we're doing.
Yes, Jocelyn and then Graciela, and then Tony. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jocelyn. So one of the things that I was going to note is that if the council is thinking about setting a constant ABC and wants to base that on a constant ACL and wants to base that on a constant ABC, I would recommend that the council ask its SSC to revise that ABC recommendation. Right now, as is shown here, we have ABC recommendations that change over the year. So we'd want to get a different ABC recommendation from the SSC, and the council could ask for that constant ABC. And given some of the discussion here about the appropriate time frame, the council could ask for the SSC to look over a 3-year time period. And that could require coordination with the Science Center, because they've provided, based on the assessment, those OFL projections over a different time series. So I would just recommend going back to the SSC if we want a different ABC recommendation that looks at a shorter time period, and also if we want that constant ABC recommendation.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Graciela?
I think I defer to John Walter, who's wanting to respond, and then you have also Tony in the queuing.
Yes, John Walter, then Tony.
Thank you, Graciela. Yes, so one of the new jobs that I've got in my position is trying to better coordinate the communications and the requests from the council to the Science Center. And so Miguel and Graciela, you'll be getting a letter about how to better do that so that we can respond to things. And one of these responses and a request could be for an interim assessment. And as Rich well put, that would not need to go through the CDAR process. And so if the council requested an interim update assessment of spiny lobster to give 2024 advice, to request that for 2023, it would be through that process where you'd send a letter and we go through the process of trying to make that happen. And that seems very doable. And if there is substantially more information, like the selectivity experiments come through, it might need to expand beyond just an interim approach. But that process is going to be put into place to make those requests happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony, and then Roy.
Well, I'm going back to the statement that Jocelyn made a little while ago. I agree with what Jocelyn said, and I agree with that we need to look at this in a 3-year time period. So I will follow Jocelyn's recommendations, and we will go on the 3-year average like we agreed on, and let's look at them numbers and leave the SSC or whoever needs to recalculate, do their job.
Thank you, Tony. We have the next on the queue is John Walter, then Roy Crabtree.
John Walter already talked. It's Roy Crabtree now.
Okay, right.
Well, I think that's the way to go, and I guess we do need to consult with the SSC again. I'm not really following what Richard said about needing to get down to the 120 faster if we just go with 3. It seems to me with the projection, there's a certain biomass and a certain level of harvest that they can sustain. And if we set things for 3 years and then update it, it doesn't, I'm not following why it would decline any faster just because of that. But that's neither here nor there, and they can sort that out with the Science Center. But I guess our question is, to the SSC would be, we want to set a constant ACL based on 3 years, and then we're going to schedule a new assessment. Go from there.
Richard, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I don't have any problem with what's being requested. And the reason I had suggested that we would need to get down to that 120 in that earlier time frame is because what happens if nothing happens in 2023? The council does not go through an upgrade, it can't be done. Are we now stuck with some higher level that's going to go in, on for a longer period of time, or does the fishery close because there's no ACL set or whatever, or should it be set at the level of what the long-term ABC would be? So that's something that I think would be, answers to that can be discussed and brought to the SSC, so we're fully aware of what the options are on how to do this, so we don't get ourselves in a jam should we not get the update on schedule. That's sort of my concern.
Right to respond?
Yeah, so what we would do would be set in the regulations an ABC based on those 3 years, and it would be the ACL, and it would be the ACL until changed. But if we got to 2023 and for whatever reason there wasn't going to be a new assessment, then I think we would have to readdress the ACL and change it based on the projections that we have. And so I suppose if that was the way it played out, we could be looking at some real reductions in 2024. But I think that just underscores that we need to get the interim assessment done to deal with that. But we do this a lot of times with all the councils where we'll set an ABC based on 3 years, and that's what's in the regulations until changed. But the ABC here, we would still have to deal with the fact that in 2024, we don't have a new assessment, then we're potentially harvesting too many lobster, and we'd have to look at it. But I really don't see what would prevent us from getting the interim assessment done.
Okay, thank you. I have Julian McGrath.
Julian McGrath, for the record. I listened to Richard stating that we're going to be harvesting this higher number. I cannot see, with all that's going on here in St. Thomas, St. John, of us getting to any higher number that we need to get to that 120,000 pounds faster. Presently, with the pandemic and the hotels closed, there are no cruise ships, and our biggest hotel, which is Frenchman Reef, they have not even self-started back renovation since the pandemic has kicked in, and they're talking about maybe June of 2021 to start back to finish their project of rebuilding, and no one knows when the cruise ships are going to be coming back. There's no way that we will be able to harvest the quantity of lobsters that we were able to harvest a year ago, and we're still recovering from the hurricanes. So, let's say, for instance, we were to use that 164,000 pounds for 2021 and come down to the average of 127,000 pounds, like what it shows there, because these numbers reflect St. Thomas, St. John. And, you know, we're never going to get close to those numbers with what's going on right now. Lobsters is one of the hardest things to sell during this time. And like I said, we don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, I think we need to leave the 3 years play out. We're going to continue looking at it every year, and maybe every time we have a council meeting, maybe some kind of update is given. What's going on in the islands? Has things improved? Have things gotten better? And the DAP chairs or the council members that represent each platform can give an update on that. Because we're the ones with the hands-on experience and know what's going on in our area. So I think, you know, we need to stick with a 3-year plan and don't rush to get into something that's gonna, in the long run, could hurt the fishermen. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. And I want just to highlight that the restaurants, the hotels, many cases, they are not on recovery process. They are already closed, just to support the lines that Julian just put on record. Roy, the next turn is for you, and I need maybe a help from Roy to see if we need a motion or a specific instruction to the staff to proceed with the with what is being discussed. Roy.
Yeah, thanks, Marcos. So to the extent that Julian's right and all these lobster aren't caught and the catches are lower than these values in the projections, then all things equal, that likely means that we're going to be leaving biomass in the water, which we could catch down the road. And so if the catches are lower, it's quite likely that we would be able to have higher ABCs down the road. The best way to get at that is through the update of the assessment, but that will be taken into account. So I think in terms of emotion, and I'm asking folks to help me out on staff with that at the moment, but I think what we do is we go back to the SSC and ask them to look at giving us a constant ABC based on the first 3 years of the projection. And the SSC can work out this issue of how much the projections need to decline with the Science Center at that time. But we ask for a new constant ABC for 2021 to 2023. And then generally at CDAR steering committees, the chair of the council and Miguel and Graciela would usually be there. And we would then work with John Walter in the Science Center and get an interim assessment schedule for 2023. So I'll make a motion, Marcos, that we ask the SSC to provide us with a new constant ABC for 2021 to 2023.
Roy, can you hold on for a second for Natalia to be ready to write down the motion on the screen? Thank you. Natalia, are you ready? Or the high?
Yes,
Natalia, just dictate the motion to Natalia slowly.
Okay, go ahead, Roy.
Okay, so the council requests the SSC coordinate with the Science Center to provide a constant ABC for spiny lobster in each of the 3 island-based FMPs based on the first 3 years of the projections. Yes.
Right, it's too fast.
Going too fast.
Yes. Okay. The council requests the SSC to coordinate
with the Science Center.
Okay, I'll let you know. Science Center. Go next.
To provide a constant ABC For spiny lobster.
Hold on. Okay, keep going.
For each island group, based on CDR 57, and based on the first 3 years.
1 second.
Hold. The OFL projections. First 3 years of the projections.
1 second. Based on the first 3 years of the projections.
Projections. OFL is okay too. They'll know what it means. Okay. And that would be 2021 to 2023. And then the next sentence, it is the council's intent to request an interim assessment be conducted in 2023. Interim.
It is the council's intent to request an
interim assessment be conducted. To be conducted in 2023 to set catch levels for subsequent years.
Catch levels?
For subsequent
in 2023 to set catch levels for 2024 and beyond.
Y le quita subsequent years.
Second.
The motion, I'm giving a little time for you to read the motion. Roy, I'm reading. I'm going to read for the record, okay? The council requests the SSC to coordinate with the Science Center to provide constant ABC for spiny lobster for each island group based on the CDR 57 and based on the first 3 years of the OFL projection from 2021 to 2023. It's the council intent to request an interim assessment to be conducted in 2023 to set catch levels for 2024 and beyond. The motion was presented by Roy Crabtree and second by Tony Blanchard. Discussion now.
Mr. Chair, Richard has a question. Clarification on the motion.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, I'm questioning whether OFL should read ABC.
Right. It's your motion. It's acceptable, the change?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Anybody else for discussion? Hearing none, I think we're ready to vote. Let me see here. I saw somebody coming in. Carlos Farchete, before we vote.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I agree with what was said by Tony, Roy, and Jocelyn, and I agree with Roy that we need to keep a constant. This thing of going up or down every year or down every year, it would be very difficult for Schuster and I to tell the fishermen, you know, you got 10,000 pounds less this year or 5,000 pounds less that year. That's very confusing. So I think we're going in the right direction. I know if we have to go to these fishers and keep telling them, you know, you're up or down, him and I would probably be wearing cement shoes shortly.
Mm.
Thank you, Carlos. Yes, we have, let me see if I have anybody else here to speak.
Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead, Miguel.
this should be a roll call, so call everybody for yea or nay.
There is anybody in opposition?
No,
Hearing
do
no-
a roll call. Do a
Roll call.
by name
Roll
and people
call.
say yea or nay.
Okay, let me see here. Carlos Farchete, Tony Blanchard,
Tony Blanchard, yes.
Vanessa Ramirez,
Vanessa Ramirez, yes.
Nicole Angeli,
Nicole Angeli, yes.
Damaris Molina,
Damaris Delgado.
Delgado, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Damaris, yes. Sorry. Somebody was talking to me. Sorry.
Roy,
Crabtree, yes.
and Marcos Hanke, yes. I didn't miss anybody, correct?
Yes, it's unanimous.
Okay, it's unanimous. The motion carries. Okay, we can go back to the presentation and the discussion, I believe.
Is there anything else in the presentation that we need to discuss? If not, you can go ahead and go to the other one. So let's ask the presenter whether she needs to add any other thing for the presentation, or
Yes.
whether we need something from the council to continue the work on the spiny lobster.
Sarah, are we missing anything else that are super important?
I think at this time, no. Eventually, you will need to make that decision on the management uncertainty buffer, but that can probably wait until we come back with a new document with new numbers for you to look at.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Then we are ready to move on the agenda. Thank you very much for everybody. The next item on the agenda is the yellow tail snap. Go ahead, Graciela.
Sorry to interrupt. You have Maria with a turn to speak regarding the spiny lobster.
Maria Lopez.
Hi, this is Maria Lopez. Just for the spiny lobsters, it will be, we would like to have some guidance from the council about what you will be expecting from staff for the December meeting. Like if you were wanting to take final action on this in December, then we will have to probably schedule a meeting or something so you can see the amendment this fall after the SSC makes the recommendations and after you know, new options are created for the amendment based on the discussions that were today. So if you can please give us some guidance on what you would like to do at this time, or if you would like to see that later, so that we know what to do. Thank you.
Marcos?
Yes, Miguel.
Probably we could ask Maria del Mar what she recommends the council to do to follow the process, and that will be easier than reinventing the wheel by the councils.
You
so
had
Maria
John.
Maria del Mar, can you tell us more or less the path that you think we can follow with the staff for the December meeting, between here and the December meeting, regarding this topic?
Yes, so that would depend on when you would have the SSC meeting to discuss this, because that means after that SSC meeting, we the IPT will be meeting to take that information and put it together in a paper. So that decision will be on the council to decide when that happens. And for example, if they have a meeting, September, October, and they are able to, to make some recommendations that we can use for this paper, then we will take that back and produce a document that you can see at a council meeting before the December meeting, so you can take final action in the December meeting. Otherwise, if the meeting occurs later in the fall, then we will bring the recommendations for December, and then we can take final action later if needed.
Miguel, I have a question.
Hold a second. We have John Walter that would like to speak before I say something else.
This is what I was trying to say. John Walter, go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. And I just wanted to get some clarity on what the request was and the motion. And it seems like the briefing book document on the option or the options paper almost already has the information we need to make this decision. Perhaps if, and I don't want to speak for what the SSC's process would be, except think that it would be looking at the projections of the ABC at different buffers and then choosing the minimum or maximum, or choosing the catch that would not lead to overfishing in any of the 3-year period, as opposed to what's currently used as a 6. And is that the process that the SSC went through to determine a constant catch?
Thank you. Heard you a little cut it, Miguel.
Marcos, I suggest that you leave this to the staff, the center, and the people who are around the table, so we can bring whatever is needed to the meeting in December, being that a final action or whatever, because you only have a few minutes more, and
Yes.
that way everybody will be clear on what is needed. So the next step will be for Graciela and Richard to coordinate with John and others and Maria del Mar about the next steps, and we will inform you during the course of this several months what will be expected at the December meeting. And that way we all have. And today, what you have done is to shorten the number of years that you project from now on, and you have already accepted that. So now what we need to do is to allow the staff to put together the roadmap for achieving the goals that you said, an objective that you said today.
Yes, thank you. I think that's the right direction. Thank you, Miguel. We are ready to pass to the next item on the agenda. We are a little tight on time. Discussion of yellowtail snapper recreational bag limit.
Hi, good morning. This is Maria Lopez. I'm going to be doing this presentation. If you can, Natalia or Graciela, if you can project that on the screen. Okay, thank you very much. So, at the last council meeting, the council requested staff to look into to discuss a potential recreational bag limit for the yellowtail snapper under the St. Croix Fishery Management Plan, as requested by Carlos Farchetti. Next. I don't know if that feedback is coming from me or is it somebody else? Okay,
Please put
so
all the mics on mute.
Okay, thank you. So this is what you requested to develop an amendment to the St. Croix FMP once this amendment is implemented to modify the current recreational bag limit for the snapper grouper paired fish aggregate that would allow the yellowtail snapper to be managed with a separate bag limit specific to the species. Next slide. Okay, so first I'm going to provide a little bit of background, and this is going to be a short presentation. And then I'm going to talk about what are the current management measures that are applicable to yellowtail snapper and the rationale provided by the fishers and some examples of how this fishery is conducted in St. Croix. And I want to thank Carlos Farchetti and Marcos Hankey for providing the information that is going to be used for this presentation. So the yellowtail snapper is a very important component of the U.S. Caribbean fisheries for both commercial and recreational harvest. It was included for management in 1985 in the Rich Fish FMP, and since then it has been managed with a minimum size limit. In St. Croix, the species is managed under the snapper complex of the Reef Fish FMP for annual catch limits and monitoring. And this is what is ongoing right now until the island-based FMPs are implemented. Under the St. Croix FMP, once it's implemented, the species will be managed as an individual stock with a single ACL. The species was assessed in 2005 through CDAR 8, and it was that assessment did not provide stock status determination because data was deemed to be insufficient. It was also included in CDAR 46, which is the CDAR that assessed data limited stocks, although it was only assessed for Puerto Rico. So as of March 31st, 2020, the stock status determined by NOAA Fisheries for the Caribbean snappers as an aggregate, which includes the yellowtail snapper, is that the species is not undergoing overfishing and its overfish status is unknown, and this is based on the stock status determination that are included in the Reef Fish FMP. In the St. Croix FMP, the species is considered to have a productivity moderate to high, and the productivity is the capacity of the stock to produce maximum sustainable yield and to recover if the population is depleted. It also has a low moderate susceptibility, and the susceptibility is the potential for the stock to be impacted by the fishery, which include direct capture as well as indirect impacts to the fishery, such as loss of habitat quality. Next slide, please. These are the current management measures that are applicable to yellowtail snapper. There is a recreational back limit for groupers, snappers, and parrotfish combined. It's 5 per person per day, or if 3 or more persons are aboard, they're 15 per vessel per day is the max, but not to exceed 2 parrotfish per person per day or 6 parrotfish per vessel per day. This recreational back limit was implemented through the 2010 Caribbean ACL Amendment, the regulations that implemented that amendment for species that at the time were undergoing overfishing. There is no compatible back limit regulations in territorial waters of Puerto Rico or the USVI. There is also a size limit applicable for all harvests of yellowtail in federal waters of 12 inches of total length. The USVI does not have a similar size limit, and Puerto Rico has a minimum size limit in the territorial waters of 10.5 inches of fork length, which is almost equivalent to the same as in federal waters. The species is managed, as I mentioned earlier, with an annual catch limit and accountability measures. And the species will be managed in the island-based FMP, as I mentioned earlier, with individual stock ACLs in each one of the islands. There are no recreational landings collected for the species in the USVI as of now that are being used for the monitoring, but that may change in the future. And I just wanted to point out that all of these measures will be carried over to all the 3 island-based FMPs. Can I go to the next slide, please? And in this presentation, we're only focusing on St. Croix because this is what was requested by the council, and I just want to show in here. And this is commercial landings because we don't have recreational landings reported. But based on commercial landings, if you look at the graph, the bottom graph, which is the one that has all the yellow, we have in the dotted lines is the yellowtail snapper ACL that would be implemented under the St. Croix FMP. You can see the level is around a little less than 16,000 pounds. And the columns, they show the harvest that has been reported for the yellowtail snapper commercial, which is the only one that it's monitored. And you can see that it will be under the proposed ACL. If you look at the graph that it's on the top, the blue represents other managed snappers, because remember that with the snapper ACL that was included in the Reef Fish FMP, the yellowtail snapper was included in the snapper complete ACL, so it was for all the species included in there. and the landings were also under considerably under the proposed ACL. So I just wanted to point that out. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Can you hear me?
I think that she might have lost signal, so let's just pick it up. Let me see if I can make. There she is. Natalia, are you back?
Okay, I'm back now. Sorry.
Okay.
Next slide.
Thank you.
This one, rationale?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so again, I want to thank, no problem. I want to thank Carlos for providing this information. This is a rationale that was captured during the past council meeting and then in conversations with, Carlos Farchetti, Marcos, and other fishers that fish for yellowtail snapper through them. So the fishers are interested in a separate back limit for the yellowtail snapper because the yellowtail snapper is fished differently than other reef fish species with different techniques. They mentioned that fishers can be selected by using different chum strategies, choosing locations or distance from hard bottoms, working with tides, hook sizes, or hook weights. They indicate that the current limit appears to be too restrictive and that it could support higher numbers of yellowtail. This fishery produces minimum bycatch, and I will mention that in the next slide as well. And fish are less likely to affected by barotrauma because they're hooked higher in the water column when the chum attracts the school. If the species is abundant and desired by locals, this is an opportunity to move fishing away from classic bottom fishing, which is multi-species, less selective, and has more interactions with the bottom. And the current limit that they're referring to, of course, this is a recreational. We're looking at making changes to the recreational harvest. So they're asking for a back limit that could allow for higher numbers of yellowtails to be harvested recreationally. Next slide. So these are some of the characteristics of recreational fishing in St. Croix. It was mentioned that by the fishers that recreational and commercial fishers use the same technique. They fish with yo-yo or rod and reel. They don't use bottom tending gear to fish for the species. All fishing is done by anchoring approximately 30 meters deep and paying out scope on the anchor line until they drift off the shelf edge. The anchor is used. They anchor using homemade grappling hooks that are made with rebar steel for easy retrieval, which also minimizes damage to corals. And they don't use a lead weight. The fisher will pay out the line when the current is pulling off the shelf edge, so they can float the bait in the area where the fish may be feeding on the chum line. For bait, fishers in St. Croix use chum to raise fish from the bottom. They also use natural bait, which is preferred, sardines, and anchovies alive or dead. Next slide. Next slide, please.
Okay, so there we go.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, there's no barotrauma because fish ride just to below surface of midwater column feeding on the chum line. The bycatch in St. Croix, the species are mostly mutton snapper, occasionally crevalle jack, and blue runner. In St. Croix, this is mostly a nighttime fishery, and there's dependency on the right moon phase and the currents. There's the use of historical locations for yellowtail snapper fishing, and all of the locations are off the shelf edge. It was indicated that there are no head boats in St. Croix, and charters mostly specialize in pelagics, although there's the occasional personal fishing to bring out tourists, etc., that would harvest this species recreationally. Next slide. So this brings us to what would be the potential action if the council is interested in pursuing this. Will be to establish a separate back limit for the yellowtail snapper under the St. Croix FMP once it's implemented. And there are some options that were mentioned during the past council meeting, and we still have to evaluate other options and include other options as the council desires. We would include a no action alternative, which will be to keep the yellowtail in the snapper grouper parrotfish recreational back limit. And the other option could be to recommend a separate recreational back limit for the yellowtail snapper. And then there will be options, there could be options as to what the number should be. During the last meeting, it was mentioned 15 per fisher or 30 yellowtail max per boat. Obviously, there are some details that would need to be decided in here. For example, how many fishers, if you want to put a limit on the number of fishers, for example, if you want to do a different number, if you have any other suggestions that you would like to explore in here so that they could be included in an options paper and evaluated. Now, there's a couple of things that maybe the council wants to consider when setting back limits. One of them is that there is no monitoring of recreational landings in the USVI at this time, although that may change. So that we have to keep into consideration that there may be overfishing concern. However, we hope that that recreational landings stay the same, allowing maybe an increase. And then here we made a note about we need to evaluate what would be the effects on assumptions of the sustainable geo level that was included in this St. Croix FMP. And what that is a level of landings that can be sustained over the long term, that was intended to be used when the information or resources needed to produce quantitative stock assessment are not available to determine the maximum sustainable yield or corresponding points such as the overfishing limit. So basically the SYL in the island-based FMPs is used as an indicator of the sustainability of the fishery. So the SYL assumed recreational landings will continue as in the past, so we will have to evaluate how this may or may not change. So this is something that that would be included in a potential amendment. Another thing to consider is the enforcement, this particularly because it's a nighttime fishery and there's also a lack of compatibility with territorial regulations. However, I understand that this is not necessarily different than how it is conducted right now, as the yellowtail snapper is already included in a back limit, but that's something that needs to be considered as well. And the last point is is there a potential for illegal sale of fish if higher limits are selected? It's something that was mentioned during the past council meeting as a consideration to keep in mind for the council, when setting a limit. Next slide. So these are the next steps. The next step could be to develop an options paper for the December 2020 meeting or the April 2020 meeting, depending, of course, on workload, to amend the St. Croix Fishery Management Plan. The other decision that the council may want to evaluate is if Puerto Rico and or St. Thomas and St. John were interested in pursuing a similar action. Now, the last part of the presentation is some examples of information that would be included in a potential amendment. Staff would review any information available for the species that could come from several sources of CMAT, for example, the evaluations that have been done in the past from CDAR, research conducted, etc. We would also be using information about the yellowtail snapper fishery for both recreational and commercial fishing. For example, how many fishers, how much fishing is in federal waters, so we can capture how this fishery is being conducted in federal waters. The other information that could be collected from the USVI recreational fishing license, market information, for example, price per pound and demands for the species. And the reason we would include that is because, it would be interesting to know if for any reason the price of the yellowtail influenced recreational harvest. And this is just an example of information that could be looked at, and any other information that could be useful to make this determination. So this is all I have for now. If the council would like to make and have any questions, if they have any questions on any of these and how to proceed, just let me know. You can go to the next.
Do you have another slide, Maria?
No, I see now it's just a slide that says questions, so it's perfectly fine to stay in here.
Okay, Carlos, just to speed up the process because we are a little behind schedule, and give you the turn to comment, and I have a comment too.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank Maria for such an excellent presentation. I mean, it covered everything. I just want to clear up some things here and any misconception, because this was brought to my attention by a district advisory member who represents the recreational fishing sector. And that was brought to his attention by his constituents. I am a recreational fisher, but I'll be honest with you, I don't eat yellowtail. I really don't like the texture of the fish. But when we discuss this later on for that white paper, you know, here on St. Croix, like I said before, that fishery is a nighttime fishery. However, I would not doubt that sometime in the future it may become a daytime fishery. We do not have head boats on St. Croix, and maybe that's something that we need to also manage in the future. And when it comes to fishing for yellowtail recreationally, it's normally 2 people per boat, no more than 3. One thing I did not ask when I was out there speaking to fishermen and the DAP member was if the commercial fishers have any objection to this increase in bag limit or separating for recreational fishing. I know in territorial waters, which we're hoping to have compatible regulations in the near future, right now there is no harvest limit for yellowtail in territorial waters. So a rec guy can, in 2 hours, catch 150 pounds of yellowtail, and he would be okay. That creates a market for a rec user, and that should not be allowed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Carlos. And Tony Blanchard.
Yeah, Tony Blanchard for the record. Yellowtail can be caught in the daytime. My concern is, although you don't have any head boats now, in the future it could become a problem. So I am willing to support what Carlos is looking for in the separation of the yellowtail from the other species in the bag limit. But what I think we need to be concerned about is the amount per boat per person. Because it may not be a problem now, but with a lot of these guys probably starting to get into the chartering, especially down here in St. Thomas, you have a lot of smaller boats that go out and take people and charter. That needs to be something that I think he should look at. That's my comment.
Thank you, Tony. Richard, let's start to speed up. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and going from a stock point of view, why are we even considering this? This is a regulation that would only apply for recreational fishing out in Lang Bank. The issue seems to be one of if tourism ever gets back to where I think everybody would like it to be, then is there a potential for that to start driving say a black market for the fish coming out of the recreational center instead of the commercial center? So that's the issue, and that seems to be mostly a local issue rather than a council issue. But if the council wants to be preemptive here and maybe drive the local regulations to be compatible, that's their discretion.
Yes, I have many comments addressing what you just said, Richard. Jocelyn?
Thank you, Marcos. I just wanted to reiterate one of the points that Maria made about the sustainable yield level, that SYL, and how the council should consider any effect of the change in this bag limit on the SYL. Currently, we don't have recreational landings, so the commercial landings were used to set the sustainable yield level for the stock, and there was an assumption about what those recreational landings were relative to the commercial landings. If you change the bag limit, that might affect that assumption. So I think if you move forward with this amendment process, I would recommend coordinating with the SSE and getting their advice on how any changes to the bag limit might affect some of those measures we have for stock status and some of the ABC recommendations, for example.
Thank you, Jocelyn. A comment on the slide, Maria put a 10 yellowtail snapper per person, maximum of 20, maximum of 30. With that, I think we address the potential of creating somebody that are willing to go a night for that amount of fish doesn't make very profitable. I think we can address on that way, and I want the people to recognize that yellowtail fishing chumming, you have a very strict area on behind the boat where you can accommodate the fishermen and drop the lines behind. On that case, the way the fishing is performed for yellowtail for quantity, it's already limited by 2 people on the boat fishing behind the boat. That's a very important comment in terms of how the fishing performed. Carlos, do you want to make a motion and we go from there?
Marcos, before you make any motion, just decide what you're going to do. What Maria del Mar is asking you is what will be the next steps. My recommendation is to allow the staff to prepare. Remember, the staff have a lot of other things that you charge them to do. So probably what we could propose is to let the staff work this out and prepare the option paper for the 2021 April meeting, and that will allow them time to discuss it with you, Carlos, and whatever. And we start with St. Croix and see how it goes. It's the other areas. By that time, hopefully, we will have the island-based FMP approved. Then we can go ahead and have the appropriate action. The other thing that it was mentioned is that, remember, the EEC is a little bit of area of St. Croix, so the local government had to really step in and decide what they want to do regarding the yellowtail and compatible regulations. So if you need a motion, the motion will be just to instruct the staff to pursue the St. Croix FMP regarding this item and prepare an option paper that could be discussed at the April meeting in 2021, virtual or in person, or a mix of the two.
Yes, can you help with that motion? Suggest the language for Carlos to consider, Miguel? And
if Carlos agree, Natalia, can we go to the whiteboard for motions?
So we're changing drivers. So I don't know if Natalia is back, but Liahai can type it up.
Okay, go ahead, Liahai.
Just a Word document.
Okay, the motion will be to instruct the staff prepare an option paper for the yellowtail recreational fishery of St. Croix that will be considered at the spring meeting of the CFMC in 2021. I would like to hear from Carlos if he agrees with that language or he wants to modify it somehow.
Carlos?
Carlos, are you there?
Yeah, I'm trying to hook back up. Hello. Hello, hello.
We can hear you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Everything just got knocked off for me. But yeah, I yeah, I agree with the motion.
Okay, so you move that, and we need a second.
Motion by Carlos Fraschetti, second.
Second by Marcos Hunt.
Marco Hanke. All in favor, say aye, or is in opposition, motion carries. Marcos, you said something like that?
And my mic is a little funky here. Yes, there is any opposition for the on the motion? Hearing none, motion carries, and we are behind schedule. Let's make a short break of 5 minutes for people to go to the bathroom, and
Just stay 5 minutes and let the people decide what they're going to do.
I keep dropping out of this thing. What's going on?
I cannot hear you, Miguel. Can you repeat?
Just give the 5-10 minute break and let people decide what they're going to do with that minute.
Okay.
And we'll be back at?
We will be back in 5 minutes.
11 o'clock.
At 11 o'clock, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Miguel. Y ahí puedes poner el screen sin compartir y después esto se le manda a Natalia. Perfect. Ok, break. Vengo ya.
Bien.
Gracias.
Miguel, ¿estás ahí? Miguel. O Natalia. Natalia. Ajá. Tú vas a pasar mi presentación, ¿verdad?
Las muchachas las van a pasar, Lía o Graciela, porque estoy teniendo problemas con el internet.
Ok. ¿Ellas la tienen?
Sí.
Ok, perfecto.
Good morning, everyone. Let's restart the meeting. Miguel, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you, Alida. You're the next one for the presentation.
I think so, and I think Leah High is going to do it for me.
Yes, I am. I'm gonna pull up the presentation right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
A second. You're welcome.
Alida, you go ahead and present as soon as I have your presentation on the screen.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay, here I am. Go to the first one. And I'll do a very quick one. Can I start?
Go ahead, Alida.
Okay, good morning. I will have a very short presentation, an update of the activities that we have been developing with the Outreach and Education Advisory Panel and those that are for the next meeting. Next, please. The first thing that we have been talking about for a long time is the fishery ecosystem plan, especially with the technical advisory panel. This is a project that is actually conducted with the stakeholders, with the Pew Charitable Trust that will conduct small group meetings to engage stakeholders and solicit their input. They are the person that are going to meet with the people that will do the surveys. The CFMC will not conduct any kind of survey. And then the Pew Charitable Trust, what we are working with them, what we are collaborating, is that we have identified the NGOs that in one way or another may have something to do with fishing and with fisheries, and that would be their information would be valuable for the fishery ecosystem plan. So we are also collaborating with the Landfest project that you heard in the past meeting. And with that is the same thing. They are going to be the people who are going to meet with the fishers, and they are going to meet with the stakeholders. The council is only collaborating, and if they need information that we have in terms of addresses, this we can do. Next one. The other campaign that we have been working on, we have talked about it a little bit, is the Sustainable Seafood Consumption Campaign. And what I want to update now is that we are working on the production of a sustainable seafood cookbook, a recipe book, cookbook for Puerto Rico and the USVI. A working group has been formed with chefs Juan Carlos Vicens, Wanda Pantojas, Cedric Taquin, Cory McGrath from St. Thomas, Nicole Gree from St. Thomas, Carlos Fachet from St. Croix, and then Diana, Miguel, and myself are sort of coordinating the entire thing. The idea is to have the consumer become familiar with the variety of fish that is available in our market. And we will concentrate on 16 of these species, the majority of which are not commonly known by the consumers, even though they are abundant in the catch. We will give information on biology, ecology, management status, and availability of the species to be cooked, because the idea is that the consumer know about what they eat, where it comes from, and what is the habitat they occupy. Then there will be, obviously, it's a cookbook, so there is a lot of information on cooking methods, and we will be working in this project from August, even though we are already meeting very often with the group, and by December, we will have the product to the council. Next one. The other project that we presented and we discussed with our Regional Education Advisory Panel is this idea of putting some importance or more importance on the women's participation in fisheries in Puerto Rico and the USPI. We already had a product in one of the newspapers in Puerto Rico, El Nuevo Día, that had a report on one of the women fishers in Cabo Rojo, how she works, where does she work, what is the importance, how does she feel about it. And the idea is to, besides that, first work on a full book from different women from Puerto Rico and the USPI that are involved in fisheries. And here we have as collaborators Janet Ramos and Nicole Gris from the St. Thomas. And also Nikita Edwards will also help us with that. Carlos Farchet, Julian. We need information to make these women visible and to have the public appreciate and respect the work they do. So there will be other reports of fisher women from different regions in Puerto Rico. And then we are working on contact newspapers in St. Thomas and St. Croix to make a similar report like the one that was done in Puerto Rico. Next one. One project that we will be working with, and I think that Miguel and Carlos are going to talk about this a little in the other business, is a pilot project in the USBI with collaboration of Carlos Farchet, Luz Gomez, Julie McGrath, and other well-known fishers. And the idea is to have some sort of activity. Now it has to be a virtual because there's no other way. But then probably we will exchange products after we get out of this scenario of the pandemic. And it is the idea to invite youth to explore different aspects of fisheries opportunities as fishers, as scientists, as educators, and then we will have presenters from the field, those well-known fishers that are in the USBI in Puerto Rico, and have the young people look at the field of fishing and the field of understanding the marine environment and understanding the value of the fisheries in our area. So this is what I have now, but Miguel will give you a little bit more information and Carlos in a little while. Next one. The other project that we completed is the book Marine Fisheries Ecosystem of Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. It is both in English and Spanish, and I think the council members have received it. They have been sent to the DAPS. Originally, the idea is that these were going to be accompanied by workshops in the field with the fishers and the fishing communities, but that is not possible right now. So right now we are working on developing virtual materials, let's say, like short videos, PowerPoints, games, anything that can be used in virtual workshop with fishers, fishing communities, and educators. So we have the material, but we have to find and invent ways of getting the information to the people, but we're working on that. Next one. The other project that is under development, probably you have seen a long time ago, this poster on the life cycle of the queen conch. Right now, we have to review the content of that poster, review the information and the illustrations. And the objective of this new poster is to include other Strombids species that are confused with immature specimens of Aliher gigas. That's Strombus gigas, that's Lobatus gigas, but the new name is Aliher gigas. And we will have that done by August. We are working on it already. It's Edgardo Ortiz and Paco Lopez as the artists, and by December we will have the product of this. And with that, then we will develop other products like fact sheets and postcards so that they have this information on the queen conch, that they do not confuse other species, other genera with the immature of the queen conch. Next. We also work on the outreach and education aspect of the CFMC strategic plan that you already know. And our participation now is to take these 6 aspects of outreach and education that Michelle Duval presented to us in our meeting last week. And we have asked all the OAP members to study those aspects and prioritize them. Frequency of communication, variety of tools, educational resources, improving general public awareness, regular in-person outreach workshops, clarity and simplicity of presentations. And then within each one of those aspects, there are also alternatives. So we should give our knowledge of what do the consumers, what do the fishers, what does the public prefer? Can they still work with radio? Do they have all the facilities for visual? Do they go to newspapers, this type of thing? So that communication with the OA outreach and education advisory panel members and the people who participate in our meetings will be available, I hope, probably by next week or very soon. And we will present to the council in the December meeting. Next one. And with the social media, I'm not going to go through the, how many people are visiting Facebook or YouTube. That's the information that Cristina Olan gives to our meeting. But we have products for Facebook and YouTube that are new. We will have very short videos based on the existing essential fish habitats videos to emphasize the ecological aspect of fisheries, like something like is climate change connected to fisheries, questions like that, and the importance of critical habitats within the essential fish habitats for those ecosystem-based management plans. We will have videos on queen conch statistical methods of stock assessment, collaboration with CARICUS, and CARICUS is developing workshops for the fishers, and the council is supporting that action, and the workshops are being streamed in Facebook, so the participants can go take it from there. And that has information from Puerto Rico and also from the Virgin Islands. Next. That's my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Let's leave a space for two questions, very quick, please, Vanessa.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa Ramirez, for the record. Alida, thanks for including all the questions that I have about the queen conch in your presentation. Just 2 things. I wish if also instead or with the poster, because the poster is very useful in the fish markets, but we need something more handle for the fishermen, like a small card that they can have in their boats so that they can find out the difference between one species and other. And also if we can work with the tool for the measure of the lips, because many of them don't know even that the measure of the lips, the one that they have to use to know the juveniles from the other.
Okay, that's very good information.
So
that's very good information, Vanessa. We will take it into account, and as soon as possible, as soon as we can get out of these pandemic regulations, we are going to Cabo Rojo and talk to you and talk to the people there. So you can see what we are doing, and we will take a lot of information for all the knowledge that you have. Something that Graciela said yesterday to me is very important. is to take that knowledge of the fisheries and turn it into the scientific information that we have. So we have to change the vocabulary and the way we address the issue. Vanessa, thank you so much for all your help. And I will talk to you also about the material for the schools. I'm still interested in the schools.
Thank you, Alida. And also, in this
hello,
time,
Alida and Vanessa. We already sent you the posters and also sent you a set of books the other day. But what Vanessa is asking can be done now. You don't have to meet with the fishers for that. We have we can work on the small decal. So once we have the poster, we can send that to the fishers. And the other thing is the gizmo for measuring the Kong. We sent through the Department of Natural Resources a long time ago.
Yes.
Something that we copied from the US Virgin Islands, actually. They came with the idea, and with that triangle, you can measure fish, queen Kong, and whelk. So it's a matter of finding somebody who can do that for us. So Natalia and I will work on finding that material. And once we finish with the poster that Alida Ortiz and Dr. Ricardo Ortiz is also working with Paco Lopez, we will make sure that we have the small decal and any other tool that we can use for allowing the fishermen to take this information. The other thing is that all this will be digital. So anybody can download it from the internet, from our webpage, and use it as they see fit. Plus, we are not discarding a visit because as soon as everybody have a vaccine, maybe we need to go to Russia to get a vaccine, we can go back to the field. But in the meantime, I cannot authorize anybody to go anywhere using council funding until probably the end of December 2021, unless everybody has a vaccine or something. They know that the council is not responsible for your death, or your relative if you go out.
That will never be. Okay, Miguel, I take it all.
Thank you, Alida.
Any other questions? I want to thank you very, very much, Nicole Grease from St. Thomas and Carlos Farchete from St. Croix, because they have given us many, many, many ideas. Okay, to me, that's it.
Thank you, Alida. Next item on the agenda is enforcement. We can start with Puerto Rico DNR.
Good morning. Yes. Let me take out my mask right now. Hold on a second. I think I have somebody here. There has not been significant interventions in federal waters or protected species during this time in June. This is so mainly because due to the pandemic, the recreational fishing has been limited or prohibited by means of executive orders of the governor because of COVID-19. Only commercial fishers are authorized to go fishing during this time. Among the interventions that rangers conducted, we had 3 land crab cases. These were captures in the Humacao region during the crab closure. During this time, the NAR passed an administrative order confirming that people or businesses that sell crabs have 7 days after the crab closure to sell their already acquired crab products. And this supports what is stated in Regulation 7949. So that's pretty much our report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damaris. USVI.
Marcos, before we go into next, Vanessa wanted to say something regarding enforcement, and this is the time, Vanessa. Do you want to do that now, or you wait for some other time?
Yes, thank you, Miguel. Vanessa Ramirez for the record. Well, practically, we have been talking. First, I have to appreciate and thanks Damaris for all the work that she have been doing since day one of this pandemic. Practically, I have been bothering her since every day. So we have been in contact with all this, but especially I went for the record. Now that we have the closure of the Queen Kong, we have a big problem in the West, especially not only because about some fishermen that are outside, also because the stockholders are making pressure to them. we already know that some of the fishermen that are out, the commercial ones, usually they have their work compromised with the fish market that help them when they have their engines or any problem with the boat. So right now we are asking if any way that we can start or given like an orientation visit to these fish markets or these fishermen that we already have recognized that are not making the things that as they are supposed to. I am here every day. It's really frustrating to see how they pass the Queen Kong, and I always make the orientation. I always tell them why you should don't do this, but practically I think that we already have given education and orientation enough, especially for in the West. So I think that it's time that the rangers take action. We have fishermen that are ready to say names and to say the PRs of the boats that are doing this. And also we have some fish markets already that we have photos, we have everything, but we don't have the legal to make the intervention with them. So we need to talk about this more and we need to take action now. Thanks.
Damaris?
Yes. Sorry.
Just for Damaris to take note, and that's it. And then she can report back to the council in December of any activity that they have taken in answer to Vanessa's request.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Damaris. You want to make sure that you heard and took note. Let's go for USVI Department of Planning Natural Resources.
This is Nicole Angeli, presenting for Howard Furbs from the Division of Environmental Enforcement. Currently, all staff, due to the COVID-19 state of emergency declaration in enforcement, have been called to the VIPD for assistance in enforcement of our state of emergency. So there is no fisheries enforcement report at this time.
Thank you, Nicole. The other enforcement report to U.S. Coast Guard.
Good afternoon, all. This is Lieutenant Robert Copeland from U.S. Coast Guard District 7. The Coast Guard is continuing to conduct the mission sets. However, there is no significant LE boardings to report upon in the Caribbean area. I do want to take this time, if I could, to try to iron out something that came up yesterday from our USVI partners. I believe Julian and Tony had some comments about law enforcement, and I wanted to turn it over to them to get some clarity in their comments from yesterday, and in a way that the Coast Guard could assist in their comments.
Can you be more specific for them to react?
Sure. It appeared that yesterday that they were frustrated with the law enforcement down in the Caribbean area, and I was a bit confused as to what they were frustrated with, and if they could help determine how the Coast Guard could help benefit or assist in that matter to alleviate some of those frustrations.
Marcos, if I may, the enforcement issue that they brought to the attention of the council was related to Coramanic Bank. And they are frustrated because there's no enforcement that prohibits people from anchoring there, jeopardizing the opportunities of the commercial fishers. And then other people are damaging the area, and then they feel that they are being blamed for something that is not their fault. And then Tony and Julian believe that if we have more enforcement from Coast Guard, local authorities, and National Marine Fisheries Service, this could alleviate this problem. They all believe that we need to have more outreach and education to the fisher and general public, especially recreational component, and to the tourist industry and other people that might use the area and anchor improperly in those places. And that's the main issue that they brought to the attention of the council regarding enforcement.
Have Jocelyn requesting to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Marcos. I just wanted to clarify regarding the anchoring. There's nothing right now that prohibits anchoring by fishing vessels in the Germanic Bank, and so the council was looking at whether that was something they wanted to pursue. So in terms of enforcement, that isn't necessarily the issue because there's nothing prohibiting anchoring, but there's a closed season. So if someone was anchored and fishing during the closed season, that would be a violation of the laws as they exist now.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I don't see anybody else have Nelson Crespo putting on the chat, also have to bring attention to the high increment of deep water snapper poachers, illegal fishermen fishing for deep water snapper. I'm assuming that is on the West Coast, from where he is. The next presentation is NOAA Fishery Office of Law Enforcement.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. This is Manny and Canaris. Apologize, is there an echo? Okay, Marcos, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'm going to provide just a brief update following our last report during the June meeting. At that time, we provided an update, enforcement update with some recent cases, and we shared our presentation. So for this meeting, I have nothing formal to present, although I did want to update the council on a recent sentencing as a follow-up to the coral smuggling case that I discussed during the June meeting. So just a few weeks ago, Juan Pablo Castro Torres from Puerto Rico pled guilty to 2 felony violations for LACIAC for collecting and falsely labeling marine species from Puerto Rico. Mr. Torres personally collected many of these species, which were actually Recordia and other reef creatures that were sold off island. And because Recordia are attached to the reef substrate, the defendant would utilize a chisel and break these things off of the reef. And so in doing so, chunks of reef were also taken, causing habitat damage to the local area. These products were sold to a local aquarium store operated by Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez previously pleaded guilty to LACIAC violations and is awaiting sentencing as well. Castro Torres is also scheduled for sentencing. And one note that was included in the press release from the Department of Justice was regarding the value. So for the product that Mr. Torres admitted to harvesting was worth approximately $15,000. And then during the June meeting, again, I did talk about Raymond Torres Ramos, who also pled before U.S. District Court judge, and he is awaiting sentencing, which is scheduled for, I believe, November of 2020. So just wanted to highlight the collaborative effort between NOAA Office of Law Enforcement, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the Department of Justice in this investigation. And then the only other item I had and wanted to bring up, Lieutenant Copeland just brought up, was regarding yesterday's discussion. I have to admit I left the meeting a bit confused. The discussion started off with discussion of potential coral damage in the Germanic Bank, and ultimately it was determined to be an enforcement problem. But in trying to address this, I was going to ask for additional information because of specifically what was brought up with no prohibitions on anchoring. I was wanting some help in assessing the problem. We are definitely more than willing to do what we can. I've already reached out to Mr. Forbes with USVI DPNR. In addition to communicating back and forth with Lieutenant Copeland from District 7 Coast Guard, we will work towards addressing the problem. I just, again, need to know a bit more on the specifics. Is this a habitat destruction problem? Is it poaching? What regulations are being violated? You know, what prohibitions do we feel are not being enforced? And with that, that concludes my brief. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm not seeing the people from Virgin Islands talking about this, but for sure we can make the connections and talk to Julian. And
Marco,
I have Julian on the line. Julian?
Julian McGrath for the record. I think one of the big problems is a lot of these recreational boats that are out there in federal waters fishing, they don't follow the guidelines to the recreational bag limits. And I think that would be a good place to start with these recreational vessels, because they go out there. There are not many of them, but there are some of them, and they're out there and they catch, they're catching more than what the recreational bag limits are with no commercial licenses. They also are coming in and they're selling them into our markets. So the big issue always falls back on enforcement. Now, I can say that I have seen the Coast Guard out on the waters over the past about 3 weeks ago, running the lines of the MCD. But I think with some collaboration with myself and some other individuals, we can give some good direction on the days or the times of when would be good to look for this activity taking place, because of course they're not going to be out there in the rough waters. They wait when the weather is flat, like this Sunday and Monday coming, to take advantage of going out in those areas when the waters are flat and it's a quick in and out. So I'll be contacting Miguel and Manny and having a conversation with this and seeing how we could also arrange that. And also, while speaking on that, I've been getting a lot of complaints on undersized yellowfin tuna being harvested and landing at the different locations of where the charter vessels are going out. So that's something that also needs to be looked into.
That would be the Red Hook area.
That would be the Red Hook area. I'm getting a lot of complaints of undersized yellowfin tuna coming in.
Thank you, Julian. Vanessa?
Thank you, Marcos. Vanessa Ramirez for the record. I just want to make a comment in the same line of Julian. We have the same problem in here in Puerto Rico. We already know that we have the recreational license in the papers, but we don't have that in the outside. And with all this thing of the pandemic, I have seen and I already know that many recreationals are getting out, but they are only stopping the small boats. The big ones, because they are big boats or just because they have friends inside, no one got interviewed. So we need to work with that also in Puerto Rico. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other person on the line, and we are really tight on time.
Marcos,
Miguel?
I propose to allow Julian and Tony to send an email to us so we can share it with Jocelyn and the enforcement officials. So we could, do this in a formal way. So we will be able to discuss it and bring to whatever comes out of this exercise. We can bring you an update at the December meeting. But the thing will start with Julian and Tony to send us an email on the specifics issues that they have, and also from Vanessa, so we can work on this rather than keep talking about it, because already the enforcement officials are asking from the Coast Guard National Fisheries Service specifics so they can address it and work on it.
Understand, Julian already say yes, that he will send the email. I think they hear you loud and clear, clear the need for that email with the specifics. Thank you, Miguel. And I think we conclude the enforcement report, and we are going now for other business. On other business, Miguel, you have.
Yeah, let me go very quick because some of the other business we already have discussed it. The young fishers. This is something that Carlos Fachete brought to my attention, and then I discussed it with Julian and Ruth. And Ruth came with the idea of having a workshop with fisher in St. Thomas. And the idea is to have fishermen like Julian, Winston Lede, and look at the different fishing sector that you have in St. Thomas. And have this time we have to be virtual, of course, a meeting where we will have presentations by these fishers. And then we will have an exchange of information, idea, question and answer session with the youngsters that will be interested in coming to this virtual meeting. The meeting will be run by the council. I will be the facilitator, and it will be mostly fishermen talking to young men and women that would like to join the fishery for some reason or the other. And Julian, Luke, and Carlos Fachete will be part of this exercise, and we need to recruit some fishers with experience like Winston Lede, Gregory Lede, and others that can give a brief presentation to them, and that will be a panel of veteran fishers that will be discussing these activities with the young people interested in the fishery. If this project works well, then we envision that we can move it to St. Croix and other parts of Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, they started this a long time ago, and we have a meeting in Governor House, but then the administration changed and nothing else happened. But the issue is that the generation gap is bigger. The average age of the fisherman is around 57 now. We jumped from 47, and fishermen are getting out of the fishery for different reasons, and they are not being replaced by young people. I talked about this with fisher from St. Thomas and everywhere, and they're all telling me the same, Miguel, that we need to do something because the youngsters are not coming into the fishery. And we need the industry to continue after the retirement of these fishers. So that's what we're going to do, and we will probably inform to you. I will be working with Julian and Ruth and the others, and Carlos, of course. And as soon as we have something else, we can give you an update at the December meeting. The other things that we have in other business are related to the spiny lobster fishery issue in St. Croix. I believe that you already addressed that in a way, and you also have the yellowtail addressed before. So we can go to the EO 1391. We sent a correspondence to you since May, to everybody. And lately, I asked Diana to send, I guess that we sent to 65 people, the EO 1391 from the President of the United States, which is an executive order on promoting American seafood competitiveness and economic. Section 4 asks the Council, specifically the Council, within 80 days after May 7, 2020, to submit actions that you recommend on a priority list. And this is going to be submitted by each council to Chris Oliver, the National Marine Fisheries Service Director, no later than the end of October, because he needs to submit the whole thing by November. We sent you all this already, and also we sent you topics to consider that were submitted to us by Dave Whaley, our liaison with Congress, and we can resend this to you again. And this includes marketing of underutilized species and where we know how to cook them, etc. And by coincidence, that's exactly what we're doing now. You have seen the presentation of Dr. Ali Ortiz that covered that part. But there are other things like incentive to do secondary processing in the U.S. Processing in the U.S. Caribbean means something else. Processing, as you know, is from scaling and gutting a fish to having a huge plant to can the fish. Changes to guest workers, etc. There are many things in the agenda that do not in the agenda, but in the possible topics that they are going to submit to Chris that are not really related to us. However, my request to everybody we send this information was for you to think about how you can tailor this to the needs of the U.S. Caribbean. And I received from Marcos Hanke, by the way, it's the only one that I have received suggestions, that, for example, we can talk about new boat ramps and parking improvement, assessing the fishing grounds, develop regional fishery support, etc. This will have been sent to you. Our proposal, Mr. Chairman, is that maybe have a one-day meeting so everybody will come prepared to give you this information, or that people send you an email through me with their reaction to the email that we sent before. Either way, we're fine. The point is that we need to submit all this to Marcos because he has to write a letter that will be sent to Chris Oliver no later than the end of probably October 15, so we can be on time for question and answer that the Washington office may have. If you agree to have a one-day meeting, we also can have the 5-year strategic plan, the same presentation that we are going to give to the DAPS on the 24th, 25th, and 26th and 27th of August. We can have a one-day meeting for those two topics on any other topic that you think would be appropriate before the December meeting. The reason for doing the meeting, a special meeting of the council, so we have input from the council members, the chairs of the committees that advise the council, is that we will be able to assist Dr. Michelle Duval on the prioritization of the issues and topics that we are going to include in the 5-year plan. And remember that because of PRA concerns, Paper Reduction Act concerns, we can no longer use the survey. And this is a way that we can canalize all the information that we need to supply to Dr. Duval for her to prepare the draft 5-year plan that is going to be submitted for council consideration in 2021. And that's all we have for
thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Miguel. And I'm really in agreement for the one-day meeting to address those two topics, maybe a few others that are gonna show up on the way during the planning time. We have Julian McGrath and Vanessa Ramirez with a turn to speak. Julian?
Julian McGrath for the record. So what Miguel was saying about us meeting and putting a plan together to have a virtual meeting with the young fishers. We are going to be working here in the very near future with Miguel and Ruth Gomez, so we could put something together for St. Thomas, St. John, and of course with Carlos for St. Croix. And we will have a presentation we will have a presentation to give at the December meeting. I spoke with Ruth this morning, and we will be working diligently over the next couple of months to put something together so we can move forward and present to the council in December. And while I have the mic, also would like to request 2 items to be added to the December agenda if possible, and that will be, we want to give a presentation on the queen triggerfish known as the old wife, and a presentation on the mutton snapper, lane snapper, and blackfin snapper from collections that were made through Virginia Chevette. We will have those 2 presentations ready to be given at the December meeting. So if at all possible, if we could be added to the agenda with those presentations.
Thank you, Julian. We took note up on that.
Yeah, Julian, please send me an email so we won't miss anything. And certainly we are on time to include those presentations at the December meeting.
Vanessa?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Vanessa Ramirez for the record. Well, I have the opportunity to read the email that we received and the recommendations that Marcos made. Practically, he covered everything that we need to be on touch with this. I'm practically only will, or have really a question, how will we connect this or this proposition to bring this to the Caribbean with the thing that the bureaucracy that we have in the government for permits and all that? I think that we should talk about that in another session, because right now it's very difficult to get permits. It's hard. I have companies that have been since a year trying, and they have already a company in New Jersey, and they start and put all the equipment and they are just waiting, and every time that they request a permit, it's something else, something else, something else. So this make that people that want to came and work with this kind of business will think that 2 times. Thanks.
Okay, Vanessa, this doesn't have anything to do with that part, but we can, after the meeting, you and I can talk and see if we can put together a special meeting with, remember, if we have a meeting of the council, I have to go through the federal race around those hoops. But if we have a meeting with the Junta de Pesca, that will be something that the Maris can help with, and we can bring to the Junta de Pesca those topics for discussion, because this is mostly related to Puerto Rico system. And we can also join efforts with the federal government. If we have any information that you may need, then I can contact the regional office, and I'm sure that Maria del Mar can help us, and people at the regional office can help us with that. So my proposal is for Vanessa, you can send me an email, reminder us about the topic, and then we can take it from there and make a copy to, please, to Damaris Delgado and Marcos, of course. So we can work on this part. Mr. Chairman, if you agree to have the one-day meeting for these topics, you need from 9 to 12, that will be the 5-year strategic plan. So you have maybe an hour or two in the afternoon. We cannot, you know, have a lot of topics on that one-day meeting, because that would defeat the purpose of having that one-day meeting for the specifics. Any other thing should be moved to the December meeting. With virtual meeting, the advantage that we have is that we can have a meeting every other week if we don't need to advertise in the Federal Register. However, for the councils, we need to advertise in the Federal Register. So the fastest periods of meeting will be every month, and I don't think that you need that, especially if we need to incorporate the federal government. They have this area is the only one with 3 councils, so the time they have is very short for attending all the 3 councils. So our proposal, Mr. Chairman, if you agree, then we can have that meeting and discuss it with Michelle for the possibility of having the meeting in September. And if we don't have any hurricanes or storms in the middle, we are proposing September 25th. That's when she will be available, and Carlos and I, because we have the CCC meeting the same week, 23rd, 24th. So the proposal, Mr. Chairman, specific from our point of view, is to have a one-day meeting, 2 topics, the 5-year research plan, strategic plan, excuse me, in the morning, and then encourage everybody that are in the list of the 65 that we send in this EO document to bring to the table your comments and suggestions. And you can use Marcos as an example to follow, because the way that they really told us is this is an opportunity for all the council to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. There's already, whenever you have something in public, you have people who oppose it. So there is a bunch of NGOs that believe that this order will be favoring the high rollers, the big industries, in detriment to the small shops, mom and pop factories and fishing operation that we have all over the states. So this is important. that the local people involved in fisheries have a say-so, and we can submit that through Marcos on time for Chris Oliver to take it in consideration. I believe that if we can prove the case for the top, let's say, top 5 issues that all of you believe are important, something will be done. Something will be able to help. And just to give you an idea, because of the pandemic, the money is not that great all around the nation. But this executive order provides some funding and may provide some funding for the future that will be given according to the needs that will be coming out, the documented needs that will be coming out of this exercise by the National Fisheries Service. Time schedule, this is something that has to be submitted in November. In November, you may have a change of the whole government, as you all know, it's election time. But hopefully all this will survive to 2021, 2022. And we hope that we can get some positive actions regarding the U.S. Caribbean on these topics. So I need to hear from, if there is no opposition to this plan, Mr. Chairman, to have a one-day meeting on September 25th with those 2 topics.
Yes, let's do the meeting. I am in agreement. I didn't saw any opposition on the chat too. Let's plan for the meeting accordingly. No objection. Vanessa just wrote again, and that's the right way. Go ahead, Miguel. Any other comment?
No, the other thing is just to reiterate that the next meeting of the council after the 25th of September will be December 9 and 10, also a virtual meeting. Just to give you an idea, the National Fisheries Service is in phase, they have a schedule, phase 0, 1, 2, and 3. And depending on the movement of COVID, the development of COVID vaccine and all that, they move from one station to another. Right now, most of the National Fisheries Service is phase 0. That means almost everybody is working from home. Phase 1 to 3 will allow the government to reopen again. Some of the issues they have, for example, needs to do with the surveys. The survey vessels cannot go out because it's very difficult. And right now, the observer program is stopped also. So we will inform you in December of any new development. The National Fisheries Service, the executive director, we are meeting every month. We receive an update from National Fisheries Service, so we can work together to see if we can adapt to the COVID needs. That's all we have, Mr. Chairman. We have now the public comment period.
Yes, we are going to start with public comment period now. Anybody from the public that would like to speak? I don't hear anybody.
No, they are also happy with the meeting, that they are happy with it.
Yes. And well, thank you very much, everybody. I think it was a productive, good meeting.
Hold a second. There was a letter, not a letter, but there was some instructions sent by Jocelyn to Marcos. And this, in case that people would like to apply for the gear, to use the gear that we discussed yesterday, it's not to rehash the whole meeting now, but what we are going to do, anybody who wants to join in with that letter, we have received instruction from Jocelyn on how to do it. We will post this in the council webpage, and I would send a copy of those instructions to everybody in this meeting via email. So any fisherman from Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands who wishes to be considered for using this gear, following the instructions that Jocelyn send us, will be receiving that information.
Okay, Miguel, thank you very much. Vanessa?
Thanks. Just to make a point on this, Since yesterday, practically the fishermen start receiving the envelopes. They are very confused about it because practically first, most of them don't like to read or don't even know how to read. So I have received yesterday 10 of them that were coming just to, or calling me just to explain them the envelopes. So I think that maybe we can put something in Facebook that because many fishermen are in the pages of Facebook, and we can share it that way so they understand why they are receiving these envelopes and the instructions that are inside, so they know for what and what they can do if they have anything to say about it. Thanks.
Okay.
Vanessa, I'm a little confused. Which envelope you're talking about?
It's the yellow envelope from the Caribbean Fishery Management Council that have inside practically the instructions if they want to make any comment from the plans. Also have the application for the fishery disaster, and have a letter from NOAA about the bulletin, about the comments that are asking for the plans, and they have until the 25 to answer.
Yeah, Marcos, that's the information that we sent to all fishers for closed season, closed areas, any new bulletin that we send that are sent by the regional office, we distribute it to everybody.
Just want to clarify to Vanessa that what Miguel was mentioning was in regard to the deep water snapper discussion yesterday. The instructions sent by Jocelyn on how the fishermen can apply.
But Marcos, what I believe that Vanessa is saying is what we should follow. All this information, I will include it in the Facebook account that we have, and we will send it to any appropriate fishing village. I am resting on the help from Nelson Crespo and others to identify those fishers that might be willing to join in with Mr. Fon, Nelson, and others to request or fill this form or send this letter that Jocelyn is talking about. Probably by the time that we receive all that, anyway, just there are many other things to consider, but at this time, for the take home that I have is that we will assist with Vanessa all the way possible to the fishers on how to get this information the best way possible, and to help them put together the application for this year.
Thank you, Miguel. Do you have anything else?
Maybe Graciela, do you have anything else to add?
Well, Sarah had put together a list of everything that you have accomplished during these 2 days. So we'll be looking at that and looking at the motions and the guidance that you've given the staff. I didn't have any other notes in my annotated agenda. And we've received new guidance regarding the meeting with the SSC. So one more item will be added to their next upcoming meeting, or depending on what the Science Center has to say, it might be 2 separate meetings, the ecosystem conceptual model and then dealing with the spiny lobster. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, before we finish, I would like to thank people that have been helping us a lot. To start with Natalia, Viajay, and Graciela, thanks to them. So the meeting flow because of the 3 of them working together. From the regional office, I have Maria del Mar. The poor lady almost got beat up just to be the messenger for presentation. Well done work. And Sarah and the people from the South Fisheries Science Center. Kevin's presentation is the first time that I see, and this is something that he took upon himself to do it, the presentation of all the projects that are being conducted in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Sometimes you have people from Minnesota doing studies here, and we don't know anything about those studies. So for that, we thank you. But I wanted to take note of that. Liahai and Natalia, they did a great job, notwithstanding the issues with the internet, audio, and everything that we confronted. So for that, I'm very grateful. I wanted to say that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you to all for a great meeting again. Thank you for being kind to the chairman, and thank you for all the support that all the staff, council members, fishermen, and participants have been doing during all those times and those years as on this new opportunity to be a council member. I'm very thankful and honored with the opportunity. Thank you very much. We are ready to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is ending now. It's 12:01 p.m. Thank you very much to everybody. The meeting is over. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Gracias a todos. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to all. Bye.
Adiós.
Buenas tardes.
Bye. Buenas tardes. Okay, stop record, stop here.